All right, a couple quick disclaimers. To start off with, I've been building a radio over the last few months, and I've been posting videos of the different parts that I made and why I made them. And this is the new IF section of 455. It's got a crystal filter 455 in it. The AGC is on here, the automatic volume control is on here. One of the past episodes I showed you a separate board, but then I went and used Penfold's newer circuit, and this has I have an AGC control on here. I also have a control up on the RF control, so the radio works nice. So I wanted to be able to synchronize the control, the variable frequency control for the frequency with the tuning of the front end. See, I could tune this between 3 megacycles and 8 megacycles. So it does 40 and 80 meters. So in other words, I need a way to tune this capacitor and have it change the voltage that goes to this front end. So of course I'm going to need a variable capacitor for the VFO and some kind of resistor pot, and then they're going to be in some type of cage like this, maybe a little more fancier. And here's this is a reduction unit. They call it a veneer reduction. I know a lot of people, that's not really a veneer. I put up with those guys a few years ago when I got involved in one of the online conferences, but I stopped sharing what I was finding on the internet. But this, when you turn this outer post or shaft, this is 6-to-1. It takes, you have to turn this 6 times around in order for this to go around once. And you put this on here like that, and of course this will be in between. Whatever. I built this once before, but also on this shaft will be a gear, and this gear will go up to another gear, which then gets attached to this pot. Now the first thing you'll notice in life when you go to build stuff is you order a gear online, and it's 1-to-1, so it's not a real big deal. You want to keep it small, you want it 1-to-1, you want it to be approximate size of the project itself. So I sat there for a couple hours going between pages on the internet, and this exact gear can go from $1.80, buying just one, to $37.50, the same gear. So you better shop around. And another disclaimer, my fingernails might be long. When I'm in the middle of a project, I don't do a lot of thinking about other things other than the project. So I need 2 of these gears. I bought 3. So in other words, when you turn the VFO, it'll be turning the resistor, which then changes the voltage for the RF front end. So hopefully, by changing the resistors off the pot between ground and the outer edge and the other one, I'll be able to get the RF amp to track with the VFO. That's what we're shooting for. That's the next step. Now, I've done that tracking using padding caps with a large capacitor, a 3-section capacitor. Remember I told you about the padding, and there's articles on it if you go looking. And if you go on different groups, you can get in arguments about it because the people there have never done it. I've done it. Now I'm moving on to having a VFO that when you turn the knob for the frequency, it automatically turns the voltage that controls the varactors up on the front end of the radio. See, I sit and I think about an idea like, well, how would you do this? How would you do that? And then I actually do it. And then find out what I thought about, would that be some of the problems? Now, whenever you buy a gear on the internet, and they say a 1/4-inch bore, that means this center hole should be a 1/4 inch. Now, if you take an RCA pot, this is from RCA and Harrison, if you take an old-fashioned and it's an ohmite, this shaft is 1/4 inch. Now, if you put it in here, it'll go in and it'll stop on the set screw. You loosen that set screw up and it'll go right past it. All right, so we're talking both these are standard. Now, if you buy things that have been made in China, you're going to have to go in and drill this out, because China on the label is shit on the table. It's not exactly a 1/4 inch. This is over. You'd call this over because it doesn't go with the standard. You know, you can get it in there, but if you press fit this on, you won't be able to get back apart. The same with this China-made variable capacitor. This is not a 1/4 inch shaft. The same thing. They're same standards. Actually, this is actually even bigger. All right, so that's when you put these things together in your head before you buy them. That's what I do. I actually build a model in my head in 3D. Sometimes I'll sketch it out on paper, and one of the toughest parts is finding a gear this is just slightly over at 1 inch. That's exactly what I wanted, with a 1/4 inch hole. And you say, well, what's it's 1-to-1 ratio. So in order to synchronize the tuning cap and the front end varactors, you have to use resistors that come in from ground to the outer edge of the pot. Now, if it goes backwards, you just reverse the outer wires. I've thought of everything that can go wrong, but of course, I knew when I bought this that 1/4 inch bore could be a problem. Well, this China-made gear has the correct bore in the middle. And how I know that is, this is an American standard. This is from 1972, might be even older than that. It's an ohmite. And when you put that in there, it slides in there and hits the set screw. But it's a nice slide fit. It's a slide fit. It's not a loose fit, it's a slide fit. It's exactly what you want. But I wanted to show you some of the things you deal with. And you need, for the VFO, you really need a 6-to-1 veneer. Now, there's guys that tell you that it's not really a veneer. They call it a veneer driver, or it's an add-on. And some of these were made like Ball Brothers. There's like 10 different companies that make this thing. And I showed you on past videos how this is mounted using this thing. And your tuning cap is on one side, and this thing's on the other. And then it goes in the radio. And it's not fun at all to build. But I have to do it again. I have to make a custom box that holds both the gear mechanism, the pot, and the capacitor. And it's just for one experiment. And the funny thing is, as I'm building this radio, the things that I've been listening to are no longer on. The 75-meter hams that were on every night during the pandemic, they're not on anymore. On the weekend, they come on and say hi to each other, and then they're back off. So some of the things I was using the radio for are not there anymore. And I think this is a station called WCCR. And it has 3 different transmitters, and it's got 9 different stations on at the same time. So if you're dialing around on the shortwave, you go, wow, there's a lot of stations. It's all the same station. And they run different kinds of programs. You can rent time on there. You got different religious stations. You got guys on there trying to tell you the end of the world is coming, you better buy gold. All kinds of nonsense. But in my mind, I'm thinking, can I build a module that when you turn the knob, you change the VFO and the front end of the radio? It's just like the Collins radio. Remember, go look at the Collins R390 or the Collins R388 and see how they did it. And they have all kinds of tuned circuits and tuned pistons and pistons that work inside of coils. And that's the peak of the receiver. It's like an R390. And there's people that'll spout, oh, I got a better receiver than that. That was the peak year for like a tube. And then they started making transistor receivers, and they started dumbing down stuff. Instead of a really good tune front end, they start using bandpass filters. And because they found out that the average person didn't need a radio that good. Now, I also saw a guy running a JRC radio versus a Kenwood. And the people down below, oh, that Kenwood's got better sound. Yeah, but in a contest where you're in CW, the Kenwood is so wide that you can't use it for CW if there's people on. Now, nowadays, CW is almost dead, so that radio will be fine. But back in the day, people used to buy the Kenwood because it had the better sound for shortwave listening. But then they'd get their ham license and realize it was barn door wide. They'd come into the shortwave store, they'd buy a filter for it, and still realized it was barn door wide. And then I was always pushing the ICOM R71A because it was cheaper than the JRC. But it's all a matter of what do you want to use the radio for. And some people just use the radio for bragging rights. Oh, I have 3 Collins R390s down in the cellar. Yeah, in a box, in a puddle of water, and then it's on eBay. And I sit there and I look at it and I'm like, this thing's rusted through and through. You know, who would take $1,000 radio, and in some cases they can be a collectible and worth $6,000, and leave it in a puddle of water in the cellar? A lot of people, obviously. Okay, that's it. I think that's it. All right, that's it.